what we saw at our last meeting with capabilities and examples and backgrounds on equipment. We'll follow that with maybe 10 or 15 minutes question and answers with the presenter on that. We'll have Eileen Rogan come up. She wanted to share some information she had on natural playground options, I think specifically after talking with some people over at the park. At that point, about 7:30, we've got some just administrative tasks related to some of the teams and some of the rules and other pieces we're adopting for the different teams going forward. So we'll probably move back up here so we can stay on the microphones for that, because we'll have several of us doing that piece. My understanding is this meeting is taped and I believe being broadcast live for people that weren't able to come. So with that, I'll let Nathan Chance come up with Great Southern Recreation to tell us a little bit about what he's got.
Good evening, everybody. I might turn this way a little bit so I'm looking more at you instead of down the hall. Oh, hold on. Technical difficulties, hold on. Get this microphone out the way. Hopefully I design playgrounds better than I run computers. Button? Okay. Says it's connecting to base unit. Well, I heard a funny joke recently. What do you call a cow with no legs? You know it? Ground beef. Yeah. I've always liked that one. Hear what happened to the cow that tried to jump over the barbed wire fence but didn't make it? Yeah, better not quit my day job, right? Okay, there we go. So I am with Great Southern Recreation. We're headquartered not far from y'all. We're in Murfreesboro, so just one county over. I live in Murfreesboro. Our owners live in Murfreesboro. Several of our install crews live in Murfreesboro, but we operate in kind of the entire Southeast. Those are all of our states there that we're in. Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, Kentucky, Florida Panhandle. We refer to ourselves as a design build general contractor. So we carry a general contractor's license in all of our states that require them. Tennessee, we have a $3 million or a $2 million cap on our contracting license here in Tennessee. We can bond and all that, but we specialize specifically in the design and build of commercial play spaces. So that includes playgrounds, which is going to be 99% of what we talk about this evening, and also includes, we do aquatics. So we have an aquatic arm that does splash pads and interactive fountains, like small water parks, not Dollywood kind of water parks, but more ground level fountains. So everything that we design, we also install in-house. Both sides of our company, I'm gonna skip this slide and go here. Both sides of our aquatics and playgrounds have in-house install crews. That's our owner on the top left and their kids. They actually have one more now. Man, those kids are getting old. They got 3 of them now. And then we've got on our playground side, we have a director of operations that handles kind of the overarching side of our installs. We have a senior project manager, Andy, there, and then 2 on-site project managers. I would be this area's territory manager. There's about 7 other Nathans running around the Southeast. And then we have a strategic project manager, and then Zach on the bottom there is our site superintendent. On top of that, we have about 14 other members of our install crews that, didn't really want me to come take a bunch of pictures of them and put them on a screen. But so that doesn't include our install crews there as well. So we started our company in 2014. So we've been around now for, how many years is that? Five years if I can do math. And many of us had been in the playground industry a lot longer. I started in the playground industry almost a decade ago. Our owners had been in it for about 4 years prior to me. And through just some different circumstances, we had the opportunity to start Great Southern, and it's been a lot of fun since. But through our entire team, when I made this slide, I put 75 years of combined experience. I think we're probably pushing 100 now. We've added about 2 or 3 more members to the team since I made this slide. But a lot of experience in the commercial playground, specifically in the commercial playground world. And then on the construction side, Jeff, that I showed you a minute ago, that fellow there on the top right, he came to us from Huntsville City Schools. He was their director of construction there and handled, he directly oversaw all of their new buildings. Huntsville's built about $8 million worth of schools every single year for about a decade, and he directly oversaw those. We did a bunch of playgrounds for him and then begged him to come work for us, and we finally talked him into it, so he kind of handles all of our install side there. So this is, there's a lot of playground theory I'm going to go into, so hopefully y'all came ready to study. But this is going to sound really cheesy, but I think this really envelops why we get up every day and work. There's a lot of different things I guess I could go do to pay the bills, but I really enjoy being in playgrounds, and this is why. So this is kind of our mission statement. I'm just going to read it so I don't mess it up. But so it says, as thousands of little hands run, play, and grow in the years to come, the space you've created will preserve the richness of your community and leave a legacy we're all proud of. The work we do together will foster a renewed community and create a better world. And you guys, especially, having the opportunity to be involved in the planning of Bowie Park, or the rebuild of that, man, that's a staple playground for the community. And it's really neat to think about the opportunity that you have to affect families that are going to come out here for decades. I mean, I don't even know how many tens of thousands of families are going to come enjoy a picnic and play and be with one another on the playground that you guys build. But that is why we do what we do. I suppose I could go sell books to schools and stuff, but it's really fun to be a part of something that really creates better communities. So that's kind of the why we do what we do. One of the things that really differentiates us from a lot of the other companies that do what we do, build playgrounds, is our in-house ability. So most of the time, playground work is subcontracted. You buy a playground from somebody out of a catalog, they subcontract somebody else that might come in from, who knows where, throws the poles in the ground and leaves. Now, don't get me wrong, we use some subcontractors because we build about 500 projects a year, and our 4 crews can't build all of them, and we have about 4 more subcontractors that do nothing but playgrounds and for us that work for us. But everything that we build, this actually extends to the aquatic side as well. We also warranty. So you always get a product warranty. You guys have heard about that, I'm sure, from your other vendors that have come in. From the manufacturer. Example would be a slide has a 15-year warranty. Plastic slide, if it breaks, covered for 15 years. What you typically don't get is the $2,000 that it costs to send a crew to a site for a day to play chess with you or whatever you want them to come out there and do, is you typically have to foot the bill for when that slide piece comes in, unless you can, put it on yourself. So all that said, because we control everything in-house, we have a labor warranty that goes with all of our product warranties. So if you got a 15-year warranty on a slide, you have a 15-year warranty from Great Southern on the labor. And that's just part of our install. So if you don't have us installed, if you just buy a bunch of equipment, stick in the ground, you would still have your manufacturer's warranty, just not our labor warranty, obviously. Now, one of the other kind of neat things about what you guys are doing, the type of project you guys have going on, I call a regional park or a gym park. And those types of major playground projects, our manufacturers typically, we can get them to give what they call platinum warranty. So for our steel manufacturer, who I'll show you in a minute, on a one-time large playground project, if you partner with them, we typically can get their platinum warranty. So on Playcraft would give an extra 5 years warranty on the plastics, steel decking, and then HDPE, which is the plastics used in the panels. And then their finish warranty. So that's the guarantee that the powder coat won't fade, extends from 5 years to 10 years. And then you get a big, wonky, huge installation kit that's in that picture. But our labor warranty extends with it. And it's not something else you pay for. We just apply for it after we know what we're, like after we design it, we know what you guys want to get. We apply for it. Playcraft says yes or no. I ask for it about twice a year, and they've yet to say no, so we could probably snake it for y'all's project. But that's kind of nutshell on a warranty. So you got product warranty. We also back up with the labor warranty, so you know it gets put on correctly and it doesn't cost you a thing. And I'm going to breeze through a few reference projects. And this is also kind of a, hey, I'm going to show you what's out there, kind of the way we do things, and just think of it as a, you know, design inspiration session as well. This is just down the road from you guys, over in Bellevue. I don't know if you've had a chance to go see it. It's a phenomenal park. And I was telling you a minute ago, I don't mean to sound, you know, like I'm tooting my own horn, but if take your kids or your grandkids there, it's a really a fun place to play. Metro did a great job planning it. We worked with the park. We've got a multi-year contract with Metro Parks to build their parks, but we worked with a pretty large group of people from the city that brought a lot of neat and introspective ideas to the playground and really helped in the design work. So what's out there now came from like a 1.5 year long community involvement project. It's really, really neat. And it's themed, so that's our metal manufacturer. I'll show you in a minute, Playcraft, the one I was just talking about. They wanted it themed to be kind of natural looking, so it's got these corrugated, metal roofs, and has some on the back side of that playground. There's a big log climber, and you've got the kind of tree look in that. This is one we just finished in Cornelia Park. Not a lot of people have heard of it. It's the old there's an old air fort over there. Cornelia Air Fort's in East Nashville. This one, they said, hey, design me the funkiest playground you can think of. And so I went back and racked my brain, and we came up with this big rubber playground mound that has some different ways that you can climb up it. You've got these rubber half balls, spheres maybe is a better word for them. And then a big net climber that links. There's a little net bridge you can climb from the bottom of the hill up to the net over there, and a big concrete tunnel. You can see this little gal here sitting on it. It's hard to scale it from that picture, but it's almost 5 feet tall, that concrete tunnel. It's a 4.5 foot concrete tunnel, then it has rubber there on it. This one is, I think, opening this weekend. It's here just in the next week or two in downtown Nashville, called Capitol View Park. They wanted something a little more, out of the box and unique. So it's got hill slides, has some rope climbers, there's artificial turf, there's poured-in-place rubber surfacing. This is the toddler area here. They didn't want it to have decks. They wanted something that was a little more obstacle course, kind of had that kind of feel. Then you've got some other embankment slides on the opposite side there. This was a project we did in Olive Branch, and it's a big mix of, it's got a lot of rubber, it's got a lot of turf mixed together. It's got areas where you walk straight from the turf onto the rubber. There's multi-generational, multi-age play areas out there. This is in Lebanon at Don Fox Park. This was actually a wooden playground, much like you guys had, that they had to tear down, that Leathers had built, years ago, that the community had built. And then we actually left. You can see in the very back, there's a little bit of a wooden area there. That was a stage. Like they had. If you ever saw it before it was torn down, the first thing you entered into was like a Shakespearean stage, and they kind of randomly do some plays on it. They wanted to keep that, so we actually had to refinish it. We're now carpenters, I suppose, too. So we refinished that wood part, and then everything else came down, and we rebuilt this. But it's got a mix of metal equipment. It has ramps on it. I think it goes up to almost 3 feet on ramps before it kind of steps up from deck. So it has some wheelchair inclusive activities. It's the darker green area is a rubber surface, and so the city didn't have the money, and you guys have probably figured this out by now, the expense in some of the rubber surfacing. They had like 12,000 square feet of area out there. So I mean, they were looking at $300,000 in just poured rubber alone. But we still wanted to provide direct wheelchair access to all the major components on the playground. So we just made what I call an accessible pathway, where you can come right into the park on rubber, and kind of through the heart of the park, there's a rubber pathway that takes you to the swings, that gets you to the rope climber, that gets you to the ramp that goes up to the play structure there. And then the rest is, and then it kind of bevels down into wood fiber mulch there. This is in Murray County. It's in Columbia there. It's kind of designed similar to Don Fox Park. It's a little smaller, but they wanted a themed natural play structure. It's a really popular theme that our manufacturer has, but that was also their, I think they called it Kids Kingdom. Yes, Kids Kingdom. That was their big wooden playground, the community built one that they had torn down as well. So that was another one that we had done. This is one we just finished in Perry, Georgia. A little more of a traditional tower structure. It's got a lot of vertical play. This is in Brunswick, Georgia. Not far from the ocean, I believe. There's some salt in the air in that photo, I would think. We snuck some aquatic pictures in there. If you ever look at doing a splash pad, we can do some of these guys too. Those are a few projects we completed. That was in Athens. That's actually the mayor and city council members. The mayor's in his, or that's the city manager in the suit. You can barely see him. He's like getting drenched right there. This is in Dahlonega. So Dahlonega, Georgia, is known for, as it was an old mining town. They had a gold mine there, and they really wanted to theme their new playground after the city's history. So we used our GFRC manufacturer. So the little mine and the rainbow trout in the back and that log climber, that's all made from a formed concrete. I mean, it's all themed. And in the mine, you can go in there and there's all kinds of apparently there's different types of gold and looks of gold. And so they mirrored that inside the mine. So it made it more interactive that kids could go in there and see it. And in case you're wondering if we do your kind of run-of-the-mill, very traditional playgrounds, we do a whole lot of them. So there's one there. I probably won't mention the surfacing again, but just FYI, there is this type of safety surface that is compliant we can use that allows you to just grow grass straight up through it. Before the grass grew, if you saw it, it's a big black rubber mat. It kind of looks like a commercial kitchen mat with the holes are like a horse stall mat if you've ever seen one. And then it allows grass to grow up through it and you mow over it. I wouldn't put them in, but they're out there if they are, yeah. Theoretically, the manufacturer says they are, Rutherford County Schools says they are. I tried my darndest to get them not to buy these things, but technically they're compliant. They meet ADA compliance. They meet, and we'll talk about ADA compliance and in theory and all that here in just a minute. But yes, they are technically ADA compliant. All right, so I'm going to jump into our manufacturers that we carry. Playcraft is the one you kind of saw some of those photos of. They are out of Grants Pass, Oregon, so they're here in the U.S. There's a lot more foreign companies coming into the country now, like from Asia, but they're here from the United States. They've been around for a little over 40 years now, making playgrounds. We have designed and installed their playgrounds since Great Southern started, and then we all worked together at a previous company and used Playcraft then. So we've been with them for a little over 12 years now, and they're a phenomenal group. So I'm going to breeze through kind of some of what they make. They do everything from your very traditional post and deck structures, kind of like what you see on the left, to they can take the same thing and make it really big, like this playground on the right. We can integrate shades into the structures with Playcraft. They have a line of equipment that they call their Revolution line. And they came out with it about 5 years ago, and it was in response to all of their vendors, so i.e. the Great Southerns going, hey, we need people want something that's more active. They want their kids to go do something more than walk up some steps and go down a slide. And so they modeled this after like a kid's obstacle course. So all the components are ground level. Pretty much everything on it is ADA compliant because you approach it and interact with it from the ground. But it really allows children a total different play experience, in the playground because they interact with this in a much different way than they would, running up a ramp or going up some steps. So that's their Revolution line. You've seen some of their themes. You've seen a lot of the treehouse themes. Those have been super popular. But Playcraft probably is one of the best theming manufacturers out there. They're certainly the best we carry and probably one of the best in the country. And they can theme anything you want. That pirate ship's in Tullahoma. If you want to go down to Tullahoma and see it, that it's there. You know, trains, planes, automobiles, you know, you name it. If you wanted like a huge Bowie knife, I assume they probably could make one modeled after that too. Compliant and safe, obviously, but. So then I'll move into well, let me go back to Playcraft for a minute. So there's, in my opinion, I've again been around playgrounds all day, every day for almost 10 years now. The major things that are wear and tear on playgrounds and where you really see the difference in manufacturers 5 and 10 years down the road. At day one, you could probably take all 6 or 7 of the major manufacturers in the country and they all look nice and shiny. Year 5 is where you really kind of start seeing the difference in who's using thicker paint, who doesn't have as much UV inhibitor in their plastic mix. So Playcraft has the thickest mill of powder coating in the industry. So mill is just paint thickness, it's powder coating. The entire industry uses powder coating on steel. It's basically the only thing that works in the playground world. Playcraft's thickness it's on average 9 to 11 mils thick. The next closest is, I think it's Playworld, but it's 8 mils thick is the next closest. And then most companies range closer to the 3 to 5 mil thickness. And our other manufacturers that we carry are also in the 3 to 5 mil thickness. So Playcraft double powder coats everything that gets a powder coating. So that's every type of metal with the exception of decks. So those are one of the big wear and tear items. And then decks are really probably the biggest because that's what the kids are running around on all day long. So those are dipped in a PVC plastic. It's a dip. It's a hot dip that they do, and then it dries, and that's measured in thickness as well. Playcraft's is the thickest in the industry. There's a couple of others that have the same thickness, but you won't. They're at the very top in that one. And then the last one is the thickness of the plastic. So if you see the slides on these two, on the slide, the 2 slides, there's 2 different plastics used in the playground industry. Rotomolded is one. So it's like they take these big, and they use this stuff for everything that's blown plastic as a rotomold. And then HDPE, sheet plastic, is the other. So the walls on the playground, that would be your sheet plastic. Anything that's molded plastic would be the rotomold. Playcraft and then they put UV inhibitors in the plastic mix so that 8 years down the road, your red slide doesn't look pink and then white, right after that. So Playcraft has the highest mix of UV inhibitors in it. But those are kind of your hot spots. Those are your big, your big hot spots and kind of the things that you would have to pay attention to down the road. Okay, so after that, we do a lot of work with GFRC. So that stands for glass fiber reinforced concrete. There's a couple different companies we use, and it just depends on what we're after. But they provide the most realistic finish of anything in the playground industry. I mean, you can't. GFRC is molded, and then they finish it by hand, and you can just get a much better textured finish than you ever could with anything plastic. So those rocks that are stacked on the left, you probably, if I told you they were real, you'd probably believe me, right? I mean, they look like real rocks, but those are made from GFRC. They also can theme to just about anything. Now, I don't think you want to put a tugboat out here, but that's an example of some work that they do. We can mix GFRC with plastics, with ropes, and you can come up with elements like this where you have some GFRC towers, but they're linked with rope bridges, and we kind of mix and match all of it and really create some unique spaces. That little log climber on the left, that's out at Red Caboose Park. If you go there, you can see that exact one. We also can use them for retaining walls and rock climbing pieces like you see in that right side. This is some other pieces they do. We've used a few of them as water features. So we've been trying to come up with a way that we can make splash pads more interactive in the off season. So like in November when the water's not running, you don't just have this big ugly sea of concrete, and we can try to find things that you could. So we've been toying with the idea of putting some rocks out there that water shoots up in the summer, and then in the winter, kids can still go and climb and whatever. So we've done a few of these. With the closest one is at Bells Bend Outdoor Nature Center. We built an indoor climbing wall, but we also built an outdoor GFRC rock climbing boulder, which is kind of a neat idea when you think of creating a space that challenges older kids as well. I have multiple kids. You'll see them in a little while, but all of them are really young. But at some point, I'll probably have a 5-year-old and a 12-year-old, but we're all going to have to go to the same, play space. And so we can make actual performance boulders. Yeah. That's out. That one's out in Utah, Moab. Let's do a field trip. Anybody want to go? But we have one at Bells Bend Nature Center. Yeah, there is an outdoor climbing wall, and it can go on a playground, but it's actually designed for like legitimate rock climbing and bouldering. We can make hill slide elements out of GFRC. I'll show you a project in a little while that we're working on now with Metro that has a bunch of this in it. They use it for retaining walls. So we have another company that we've done some work with called Whole Trees. They mix ropes and then actual trees. A lot of it is Robinia wood. It's kind of the European version of cedar wood here in the South that's naturally rot resistant. It doesn't have to be treated. But a lot of the structural elements on it are sanded posts like you see there. We'll have to deal with some splinters. They sand it pretty well and coat it pretty well, so you don't get a lot of complaints with it, but it is something you'd have to think of. But you didn't shut your playground down for splinters, so kids survived them, right? But something else is kind of, it's unique, it's natural, it fits in a natural environment. Have you guys seen the music elements yet? Freenotes music elements? These are crazy popular and super cool. I love music. I'm horrible. I can't play guitar or read music or any of that. But one of the really cool things about Freenotes is that they're based on the pentatonic scale, which if you know anything about music, which I don't, I learned this in playgrounds, not in music class. On any key on the pentatonic scale can be played with any other key on the pentatonic scale, and it sounds real nice. So you don't have to know that you can't play an A flat and a C minor or whatever together to get it to sound. So basically, you don't have to know anything about music to go bang around on it and make it sound real pretty. Let's see if this will work. That's not going to work. Oh. Let's see if this one's any louder. There we go. So this piece, you can barely see it in the top up there. It's got a songbook that's color-coded with notes, so you can come up and play Row, Row, Row Your Boat by hitting the color codes. But all of these instruments, I'm going to get off this so it quits singing to us. They're all handmade out in Colorado. They're all tuned, so that they've got about 15 different instruments, and every one of them is tuned, so it's very different from what's traditionally been in the playground industry for music. I mean, it's legitimate musical equipment. I mean, it's like equivalent of what you'd hear in a band room in middle school, but made to be outside. But the other really cool aspect of it is it provides, there we go. They're all ground level again, right? So anything can be approached from the ground. You can be in a wheelchair and approach it. You can be this tall and approach it, and you can be this tall and approach it. And everybody, I don't care what age you are, or what your ability is, loves to bang around on some drums and make music on this stuff. And it's really cool from a community play space perspective to be able to put something out there like that you'll see toddlers and moms and dads and grandparents all playing on this stuff. It's not just playground specific. Then on top of that, because it's not playground equipment, it doesn't have to have safety surfacing. So it can go in an element like this where you have it on like a concrete walkway. A lot of times it might be central in a playground, but you don't have to cover that whole surface with rubber and have that expense. All right, so last big one is Berliner. We do a lot of work with them. They're rope play equipment. They don't make a deck, or I take it back, they make a transfer station, but that's it. Other than that, they don't make any kind of decks. Everything is elevated play, so all the play is vertical. You get a lot of play space, this way, and so it saves on your area. But it's really unique. It's a lot different than, I'm not going to go super in depth in this, but it's much more unique and much different from what we have traditionally seen, especially in the South, as playground equipment. So Berliner started making cables back in 1865. Before that, they made some kind of ropes for ships or something, like going back to the 1600s. And then in 1971, they came out with the world's first piece of playground equipment that's in Berlin, and it's actually still standing. I think it's on its second net and still standing out there. And then they've made playground equipment ever since. This is the first one, and so the biggest questions I get about rope playground equipment is, how often do I have to replace the rope? Is some kid gonna come up with some scissors and cut it? And then, is it safe? We'll address the is it safe in just a minute. But I put this slide in here. So how long ago was 1994? God, is that 25 years ago? Man, we're all getting old. Lord have mercy. 25 years ago, that one went in, and they did replace the net on it. It was 2 years ago now. So the net on that lasted 23 years, which is actually a lot longer than most steel playgrounds we put in the ground. The average life cycle of a steel playground is usually between 15 and 20 years. Not necessarily because it's fallen apart at 20 years, but it's because the next PTO mama group gets in and they're tired of seeing the old playground and they get rid of it usually. But they have very long lifespans, and I'll show you some, there you go. So the rope it's a galvanized steel wire core, and then it's wound, and it's like each one, it's hard to explain. If you saw the machine do it, it would make perfect sense. But each one is individually wound, and then they wind the whole thing in yarn. We've been selling them for 8 years now, and we've had one rope claim, and it was I'd have to look it up. It was at a school in Franklin about 5 years ago that they had to replace a rope section. In the world of rope climbing, there's not nearly as many manufacturers as there is steel playgrounds, but in the world of rope climbing, they far and away hold the most patents of anybody out there, mainly because I've been doing it so long. The biggest key to rope play equipment and the life or the longevity of the rope is keeping it tensioned. If it gets super loose and kids can move it around real easy, it wears it out a lot faster. But see that little cutout in the top right corner? They have a patented tensioning system. So it's just this big hex. They call it I forget what they call it actually, but it looks like just a big hex wrench. And you go in there and you can crank each one a few times, and it pulls the whole net out and tightens it. Typically, we tighten it when we install it. It has to be done after about the first month or two, depending on how many kids use it, because the rope will loosen up a little bit. And then after that, most of the time people do it once a year. So you're not out there every week tightening it. They also have a cloverleaf ring, the only rope manufacturer that has this, and it allows, if I can go back here, you can see all the little ones there inside the rope. So if my middle son, who is known to destroy things, got out here with his chainsaw and cut through one strand of rope. He doesn't actually have a chainsaw, but if he did, he got it here and cut it. You can replace individual strands of rope. Most other manufacturers, if one rope broke, you'd have to replace the entire thing because they are all clamped down together. The other big thing is the high capacity. So a lot of people breeze over this. That piece only takes up, it needs 932 square feet of area, including its use zone. And somebody has counted this. I have not gone back and checked them, but let's just assume that there actually is 72 kids. Heck, let's say that there's 50 kids. Supposedly there's 72 kids on that thing. For me to design you a traditional deck structure that could hold 50 to 75 kids, it would need probably 3,000 or 4,000 square feet of area, which, when you start taking into consideration safety surfacing and all that, is a lot. So the big thing is you can play a lot of kids in a small area. That's one of their big positives. Last thing with them, a lot of people ask if they're safe. That piece is 28 feet tall to the point. No, sorry, 34 feet tall to the point where the gal is standing in the white shirt way at the top. The highest point you can stand is like 28 feet. The use or the fall height for that is 6 feet. So that's the distance that you could take your foot slip, fall vertically and land on some other type of netting that would keep you from hitting the ground. There are traditional play structures all over the place, and I'd guarantee you within 10 minutes of here that have much more than a 6-foot fall height, 8 and 9. That one that I showed you at Red Caboose Park has a 9-foot open deck. So technically you could fall 3 feet higher on that, even though this baby's 20 feet higher up on the ground. We've never had a major injury. In fact, Berliner has never had what they call a catastrophic injury reported, which would be something that was more than like a kid just breaking their arm in their existence in 50 years. Okay. There's my middle guy, wild man. He's older than that now. Probably not nearly as sweet anymore either. So going into playground design. So going into playground design, these are the things that we typically try to really keep in mind as we're designing a playground. One, obviously, is your age range. The playground industry manufactures for 6 to 23 month, 2 to 5 year, and then 5 to 12 year age range. So ability levels, we'll talk about this here in a second. Will the children be monitored when they're using the playground? If no, if this is the type of playground where you're thinking parents are dropping kids off, or there's a bunch of them coming from like a neighborhood and there's not going to be people watching them, we want to know that and take it into consideration in how we lay it out and design it. So what type of equipment, how, themes, active play, imaginative, which is kind of all the stuff that we just looked at. What's access to the play area like? And I don't mean access for me to come in and build it. I mean, how's Johnny getting from the car to the playground? What's the topography like? Which y'all's is pretty flat. I've been out there and seen it. At least what's left of the play area is pretty flat. Do you need to incorporate shading? You got a lot of trees, you might not. Maintenance, so there are items that are a little more maintenance heavy, especially when you talk about safety surfacing, then equipment quality, which we have been over in depth. So safety surfacing, I won't spend a whole lot of time here. Y'all ask me questions at the end of it. I'm going to give you very generals real quick. So loose fill safety surfaces and unitary surfaces. Those are the only approved type. Loose fill means you can pick it up and drop it. Unitary means it's not going anywhere. The approved loose fill surfaces are sand and pea gravel, but they're not ADA compliant, so I'd probably forget about those. But they do have a fall height rating and per ASTM are allowed. Engineered wood fiber mulch. Wood mulch it is ADA compliant and it does protect for fall height. Now, because it's ADA compliant does not mean that it's very easy for a wheelchair to get across it, but it does pass the minimal test to be ADA compliant. It's the lowest in initial cost. I'll just throw out a price. It typically runs about $1.50 a square foot to get the material and get it installed. That's pretty cheap. But it has a higher maintenance cost. It's going to lose depth. It's wood mulch, right? So it turns back to dirt, and then you got to maintain it. You'd probably, as big as your area is, have to buy 2 trucks of it every year. That'd probably be $3,000 or so, $4,000. Then going up from there, rubber mulch, so loose fill rubber mulch. There is a black non-coated rubber mulch. You do not want it. It's cheap, but it will turn all the kids' clothes black, and it'll be hot as all get out. So just pretend like it doesn't exist. There are colored rubber mulches. They'll run probably, call it $5 a square foot about. It's just a hair less, but $5 a square foot to get 6 inches of loose fill rubber mulch, and that would be getting one of the colors. I kind of put it medium initial cost, but there's very little maintenance cost. There's maintenance in having to, because kids will kick it out from the slides and the swings and stuff and like raking it back in, but maybe once every 3 years you're buying a ton of it for $800 and bringing it in and spread it out. And all of those require a containment border, obviously, because you got to have anywhere from 6 inches to 12 inches of it. Plastic is a very common one. We can pour concrete border, but it's got to have a containment system. Unitary surfaces, they go way up in cost. Okay, so you got wood mulch at $1.50, you got rubber mulch at about $5 a square foot. Unitary surfaces are going to jump up and start at about $10.50 a square foot. And then on top of that, all of them have to have a substrate. So wood mulch and rubber mulch, we can go out there and put it on top of your 57 stone or whatever it was y'all got out there. We can put it on top of grass. We have to either have a gravel base or a concrete slab. So your gravel is going to run you $2 a square foot, or you could pour a slab for $5 or $6 a square foot. So that really means your unitary surfaces are starting in the like $17 a square foot range. But that would be poured in place rubber. You saw a lot of that on those slides that I showed you. Rubber tiles that you don't want to use, but we can talk about if you do. They're real expensive, and then they also pop up. You got to maintain them and stuff. Artificial turf, which is a great type of surfacing, and then the grass mats that I told you earlier about that now don't exist in your mind either. Those are also unitary. The downfall to the rubber systems are, and if you go out to a rubber playground that's been in use for 5 years, you'll notice holes in it. You ever seen? It'll be like blue rubber, then there'll be a black hole, and that's just where it breaks down over time. It uses a binder. The sun breaks it down and makes it weaker. And every 5 years, you might have to spend $5,000 or $6,000 having to have some of that stuff patched. So you guys having an area that's shaded helps. The UV is what breaks it down the most. That helps. It is hands down, rubber or turf are hands down the most accessible. They're hands down the easiest for a wheelchair to get from an entry point of a sidewalk parking lot onto the playground. And then the most maintenance friendly, but they're also the most expensive. All right, so this will give you a quick idea and visual. So this is a playground we just finished installing for a school in Murfreesboro. And they did well anyway. So all the equipment that you see on there, its freight and its install is right at $91,000. So before you do any surfacing, okay? So it's just it's sitting out in dirt, right? $91,000. And that's a 2 to 5 year area, 5 to 12 year area. You got swings, got a net climber. It's a great little playground. But you got $90,000 in that. Okay, so rubber mulch surfacing, that top right number. You take that equipment I just showed you, put your rubber mulch in with plastic borders, you're at $121,000. You bottom left is your wood mulch, you're at $103,000. So it cost you $12,000 for the borders and the wood mulch. And then unitary surfacing, which the poured rubber and the artificial turf runs negligibly different. They're about the same price. That jumps it up to $175,000. Just to kind of give you a frame of reference. All right, so this is the last big thing. ADA compliance. This is a big, huge deal. You guys probably already know this. Let's start with, okay, yeah. So ADA compliance is absolutely required, okay? You can't get around it. You're a public facility. You have to be ADA compliant. There are a couple of small things we have to think about outside the play space, and it's mainly just that where people are parking and then coming into the playground, they have an accessible path, which is typically, concrete sidewalk that slopes at the proper way and has the proper side slopes, and all that has got to be at least, I think it's 32 inches technically, but 36 inches. It doesn't have a cross slope greater than 1:48, blah, 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 but you got to have accessible sidewalk. And then inside the play space, you have to have an accessible route. If you remember that, the Don Fox Park I showed you that had the green rubber route going through it, that would be an accessible route. It doesn't have to be rubber. It could still all be wood mulch, but it has to be a 60-inch wide path that a user could go and get on all the access points of the playground. You have to have ground level accessible routes to each play area and connect the entry points with another ground level play component. You have to have transfer access. So I'll show you a picture of a transfer station in a minute, but there's a certain thing called a transfer station, and you have to be able to access at least 50% of the elevated play components via the transfer system. Elevated play component would be a panel, a slide, anything that you have to get up off the ground to interact with. So at least half of them, you have to be able to, you have to have this transfer access. And then if you have more than 20 elevated components, so if you had this chart in your head and you went out to Red Caboose, you would see this perfectly. They ended up with like 28 elevated play components. So once you hit 20, or 21 technically, you have to have a ramp to at least a quarter of them. So even if, now Red Caboose wanted a small ramp on there, but even if they didn't, we would have had to have put one on there. And then the ramps are 1 to 12 slope. And then the last big one is that it has to meet this table. You really don't have to remember a whole lot of this because anything we design will meet all this, but this is what we're having to take all this into consideration when we're designing it. So there's a chart that will show you on the left you would say, all right, my playground design has, let's call it 7 elevated play components. You move over to the right and you see that you then have to have 2 ground level play components, so like a panel on the ground. And then you also have to have 2 different types. That's what the third line is. So it's just, you basically can't just stick a whole bunch of stuff in the air and call it a playground and be ADA compliant. That's probably the biggest takeaway. That was for a different one. Don't relocate equipment. It's terrible. So here's the last thing I'll show you. That's my oldest one. He was 3 then, and he's 5 and a half now. Friedrich Friebel, has anybody ever heard that name? He's a German fellow, lived in the early 1800s, and he's generally credited with starting kindergarten. So way back then, the general theory was that up until like the kids under like the age of 6 or 7 didn't really develop emotionally or cognitively, which if you've had children, you know is by the time they're about a month old, they're doing all that stuff. And so he started kindergarten in response to that, so that because he had started bringing 4 and 5-year-olds into his class. But his emphasis was on free work, so they would go outside. They did a lot of singing. They did a lot of gardening. But he felt like children learned the best through creative expression and outward play. And this is his quote. So he said, play, one of his quotes, you should read about him. He's a really interesting guy. Play is the highest expression of human development in childhood, for it alone is the free expression of what is in a child's soul. So now you have a heavy weight of knowing you've got to make sure this playground is really cool. But that's what we're doing. I mean, playgrounds are way more than just somewhere to let your kids run off steam. Now they are that. I mean, there are days where I'm like, all right, boys, y'all go to the tree house and don't come back until you're falling asleep. Just go run around, go nuts. But we're doing more than just making a place for people to just escape and, drop kids off. I mean, kids are learning. They're learning socially. They're learning how to play with one another. They're learning how to share. They're learning how to interact. They're developing through playgrounds. And so it's incredibly important to design things in a way that are thought-provoking for kids and not just pull stuff out of a catalog. So going back to this, from that little guy is sitting, so you see that neck climber? He's sitting up there, top, kind of left corner, the top of that little pyramid. So, and remember, he was 3 years old at the time. Here's a really neat thing that I've learned watching my kids play since I've had children is the 2 to 5 year structure. So that one way in the back, man, your average kid, by the time they're like 3, they're not touching that. They're over in the towers. All 3 of my boys were like, even my 2-year-old, he's 2 years old now. He won't go. He can't get up the net, but he'd be trying to get up this tower. There's a place for them, but one mistake we often make is we put way too much into the 2 to 5 year playground where I'm telling you, your average 3 and 4 and 5-year-old, they're on the 5 to 12 year stuff. So we want to be cognizant of how we design it there. This is hard. I'm sorry for the crappy picture. We're currently in the process of developing 2. Now just the playgrounds of these are like nearly $2 million each for Metro Nashville. And Ravenwood Park is, when we think of like how we're going to design something that's really unique, really out of the box, they have a big hill. You can see it in that bottom left-hand corner. So this is their 2 to 5 year space on the bottom left. There's swings, which are traditional. There's a ground spinner that's really hard to see in that rendering, and there's a hill that goes up to 5 feet tall. And you remember those big rubber spheres that I showed you that photo of? Those are there. There's a couple of ropes that come down the side that kids can climb up with. But they really felt like a better way to challenge even crawlers. My 18-month-old, 20-month-old, he can get at this stuff, is to have something that's not just 2 feet off the ground, post and deck, but something more like this. And then they have there's a picture of it, a little better. You can kind of see the ropes that come up the side of that hill there. The rubber is going to look crazy. They have a big tall tower. That thing's 38 feet tall. Pretty cool. And then Mill Ridge Park, all of what looks like rocks are rocks. We're buying them from a quarry, and we're going to stack the heck out of them and make these rocks. But the whole idea of this is an interactive outdoor play space where kids are interacting with what's on the playground design. So there's some slides that come down the hills, and kids can climb right back up these rocks that come down the slides. You have the net climbers. This one has You can see it. There's two towers there's a bridge that connects them 8 feet high and comes across. They use a lot of really cool bamboo panel finishes that give it a really cool natural look. But when you talk about somebody building a park that's going to get on the map and people are going to go, holy goodness, that's a playground. That's kind of what the designs are starting to trend towards there. All right, so last thing is the ADA compliance and then what we call inclusive play. I'm sure you guys have heard the word inclusive playground thrown out there. We're hearing the word inclusive in pretty much every avenue of life now. So ADA compliance is a requirement, but minimal ADA compliance does not necessarily include everyone. So the question is, how do we truly meet the needs of our community? How do we talk about designing a community play space versus just filling it? So the question is, what has been the traditional playground industry's response to inclusive play? And I know you've seen this stuff. There it is, right? A ramp. So at some point, somebody said, hey, the best thing for children with disabilities is to allow walkers and wheelchairs to get up on a playground. And that is a great, that's a great thing. But the ramps provide barrier-free access, meaning you don't have to get off of whatever mobility device you use. The other thing people don't think about is you have parents sometimes that need a wheelchair that their kids don't, and the parent may want to be up on the playground structure there. We did a playground for a Wounded Warrior project in Birmingham years ago, and it's ramped, but it's ramped for soldiers that came home and would have to be in a place. So statistics say, and this is a government statistic, it's 2 years old now. No, it's not 3 years old. But it's used for the government to figure out how much money to put into different areas of the disabilities and education fund. So this is how this is their statistic on the types of disabilities out there. So you have your learning disabilities, you have developmental delays, emotional disturbances, hearing impairments, speech or language impairments. But the big one that I want to look at is orthopedic impairment. It's in the 1%, and if you actually look at the numbers, it's technically a hair less than 1%. And orthopedic impairment means you've got a mobility, you use a mobility device. And then in that category, there's a fraction of that use wheelchairs. So the question I think that we ask is, how do we take that statistic and make it come alive on a playground, right? Because every community is going to have, that's what this comes out of, right? This is a statistic from your average community, is going to have statistically something like this in their community, right? So the question really is, knowing those statistics, is this really the best answer to an inclusive playground for an entire community made up of that full statistic? You don't have to say yes or no, just think about it. Or maybe something like this, right? Where you have ground level components, you have things that are accessed from the ground that you don't have to get out of a wheelchair to have some kind of interaction with. This is a phenomenal video. I cannot tell you what disability this child has, but he does use a wheelchair and this was actually shot like on a mom's cell phone. This wasn't Berliner going out and staging something, right? So the question I always ask when I watch this is, what sense of accomplishment do you think that little guy feels when he makes it? And he'll get up, then there's his buddy. There's another video where this little guy on the right he's bringing him in the playground. But when he makes it up to the top of that net climber and then comes back down, what type of accomplishment do you think he feels getting up there versus, when you just saw that ramp structure where he would go up and kind of dismount, go down a slide, somebody bring him his wheelchair. And then here's one. This is a better one here, I think. Fast forward. But him and his buddies get in here, and they get moving in this little hammock. Isn't that cool? Isn't that neat? So this was a park. Now, we didn't build this. It's up in Ohio, in Blue Ash, I believe. It's called Summit Park. It is a boatload of playground hills and embankment slides and things that topographical interaction. The park system has cameras out there, and they counted every kid that came in this playground for, I think it was over a weekend or the first 10 days. And they said that 10 to 1 kids gravitate. I'll show you a picture of the other side of the playground, but 10 to 1 kids gravitated towards the hills than the entire rest of the playground area. There 10,000 kids ran around on those hills in the first 10 days of the park being open. So you think about Cornelia Park. I don't know if you noticed the guy in the middle, but that's me, that's my boys there. But my little fella right here on the right, so if you think about, if you could see what a 6 to 23 month playground looks like from a catalog, they're dumb. I mean, it's like a little slide this tall, and they're super lame. But and I promise you, I'm not making this up, for 15 straight minutes when we were at this playground, he climbed up the spheres, and he walked over to where the middle of the hill is, like right before you get on the tunnel, and then he slid down the rubber, and he just circled right back around again. I had to get him to stop to go do something else. 15 straight minutes he did that. And then on the left, he is not quite 4, so he's a Christmas baby, so however old that is, he's 35 months old. And he climbed all the way up to the top of that net climber that you saw that is it's 12 and a half feet tall to the top of it. So I took all 3 of my kids, only one of which is barely in the 5 to 12 year playground, the 5 to 12 year age group, to a playground that had no 5 to 12 year equipment, and they went nuts on it. And really had, I think, a much cooler experience than, your traditional 2 to 5 year. There they are running through the tunnels. It's not my daughter, I wish it was, I need a girl. 3 boys, no girls, 3 boys. So this was the other side of that playground in Blue Ash. So those hills in the background, kids use 10 to 1 versus all of this stuff, this is also pretty cool right here up front in that. There's a bigger picture of it there. This is the last little exercise case study that you'll have to really use your brain on. So $360,000 playground. This play structure, and I think I included a set of swings and then an inclusive spinner. You've seen them before, like a merry-go-round, an inclusive merry-go-round. It's 7,800 square feet of play area. So that's the rubber surface, that's the substrate for it, the perimeter for it, this entire structure. And this is a big structure. It's ramped fully to, let's see, it's 96 inches, 8 feet, I think. So a wheelchair can go from the entrance all the way up to the highest deck without coming off of the wheelchair. That's $360,000. Has got 30 play components, 9 climbers, 8 slides, 5 freestanding pieces. One of the things that's problematic in assuming that a big ramp is the best thing for inclusive play is if a child does use a wheelchair, have a walker, some mobility device, that's a lot. Every one of those ramps is 12 feet long. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know what 8 times 12 is, but it's a big number. 100. Oh God, 100. How big is it? 96, almost 100. There we go. 96 feet that they have to go, plus the hex decks in the middle. That's just the ramps, and they got to hit all those hex decks. So you got well over 100 feet of space they have to travel. They come down the slide, but their wheelchairs, back at the entrance, and now you got to get it all, which is okay. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is problematic. So then the question is, this is also a $360,000 playground. It's like $375, but same ballpark. If you wanted it, I'd give it to you for $360, right? So it's the same price. It does have ramps. See the structure on the left there? That's a 2 to 5 year structure, and it ramps up to 2 feet. So there is a ramp for a wheelchair to use if you had a child that came to use it. Then there's a small hill. It's hard to tell with the grass, but you can see coming down to the right from there, there's a small embankment hill. It's 3 feet tall. That's all artificial turf. The graphics guy went way too fuzzy with it. That's all artificial turf. Then there's a ground level spinner, so a wheelchair can come directly onto that merry-go-round. Shaded swings around to the right. In the middle is the free notes equipment we looked at earlier. That can be central to the playground, doesn't have to have safety surfacing. Behind that, let's see if I have another view. There you go. You have the slides on that mound go from 5 feet. It goes up to 6 feet. And it has a bridge that goes across from the top of the hill there to a play component to a net climber there. And then you have a really tall net climber on this side. There's the top view. That's what that ground level spinner looks like. It has a little buddy swing there where that disc is. Here's another one that's in the 375 range. This is all rubber, so same deal. So I'm trying to like compare it to some stuff where I'm not like showing you a wood mulch play. This is all rubber surfacing. It also has a play mound. Now this was this was designed for the Ronald McDonald House in Memphis. Now every child that they have that comes through the Ronald McDonald House so their statistics are going to be much different from what your typical community would have. And this is what they chose. I showed them first a structure that ramped all the way around as an option one. And then this is the one that they like better. And it's got a play mound on it. It does have ramps that go up to 3 feet. And then it comes across with a bridge. There's a ground level spinner. You have linked some of the ground level Revolution components there. This is another design we did, same price point. It uses a ramp structure. And I think ultimately ramping is great for like the 2 to 5 year side, because 2 to 5 year structures can't go over 4 feet anyways with an open deck. So that's kind of a great spot for the ramped section there. And that net climber does actually have a net. It's not just open like that. Got to render it. And it's got some hill slides. Those are 30-foot long hill slides. That'd be neat. And this was for a school in Memphis, and their kids designed this. So I had to go in and bombarded with kids and playgrounds, all this stuff. But this is what and we showed them like traditional stuff. We showed them the full gambit. They got the spill like you guys did. And this is what they chose. This big tall net climber. That rock in the back is one of the performance rock climbing pieces that I showed you earlier. And then this tower structure that's got kind of a mix of rope. Then the last thing that you can kind of think to include is ground level pieces. So like the top right, we often want to try to find some kind of, we want to design like some social areas and some areas that are kind of away from the playground. So kids, some kids just need a break from the running and the screaming. And that's, something like that's a great spot for us. We try to design that in it. Then we can incorporate other elements like this big tree spinner on the right that a lot of different ages and like, abilities of play can use at the same time. And then we talked about hills, but if you got slope, you can use it. If you don't have it, we build hills. That one at Cornelia, it was as flat as a pancake when we started, and then we built a hill on it. So just because you don't have hills out there doesn't mean we can't incorporate them, to some degree there. About that. That's not one that we built. That's up in like Massachusetts, but that looks phenomenal to me. Y'all got any U2 fans in here? Don't be afraid to elevate. If you don't know that one, that's a good song. Yeah. But we talked about that, a minute ago. A lot of people get nervous, like, when they think of their 5-year-old climbing up 14 feet high. But you can really use the space much better when you play vertically, and it saves money. So the issue is, at some point you're going to have a set budget. You're going to say, hey, we're going to spend X amount of dollars, and I'm going to start by breaking that down into, okay, well, do you want wood mulch or do you want poured rubber? And we're going to start with that. And if you say, hey, I want poured rubber, artificial turf, I'm going to go, okay, well, I know that you're going to have this much area, and we're going to start with that, and then this is what's left of your equipment budget. So as much as we can keep the rubber down, that it allows for more equipment there. And that's where it ends. You don't have to. That's on a ski slope in Germany. Isn't that cool? But my 2 cents is, when I design playground, I'll design it however you want it. If you want it super traditional, that's great, and there's a great place for that. But my children play in the woods all the time. We live right in the middle of the city, and I finally talked my wife into moving out of the neighborhood we were in so we could have an 1.5 acres. Oh boy, right? But they have a little tree house. They're at the creek all the time. We catch little creek chubs out there. We actually found out we have smallmouth in the creek. That's pretty wonderful. But play by nature is very exploratory. That is why kids play. They play to learn their environment. They learn how to carry themselves. I'm not opposed to kids getting hurt on the playground. Now, we don't want a kid to have a life-altering injury on the playground, but kids, one of the very first places that kids learn risk-reward management on a playground, right? When they climb up on top of the monkey bars instead of swing from them, and then they jump 8 feet down to the ground and they twist their ankle, then they learn, oh, I can't jump 8 feet without getting hurt, right? That's why they put when the Superman costumes first came out, that's why they had to put the little disclaimer about you cannot actually fly with this because kids were jumping off the off the roof, and then they learned, oh, I can't fly, right? But that's what, you know, and I think for a community, that's what we want to build, right? We want to build, one, a play space that every single citizen can come and enjoy. Every age group can come and enjoy. Every ability can come and enjoy. You want to build a space where when mom brings her kids that are from 3 to 12 can all interact and play on the space. And then we want to also build something that is, you know, that kids can learn and they can grow and they can, you know, and they can have something neat to them. And then on top of that, you have the added bonus of this being your, you know, your gym. This is the Bowie Nature Park is what, you know, it's been a big part of Fairview, right? So this is the kind of project where you want it to be unique to Fairview. I mean, if you were talking about building a little pocket park in a neighborhood for $20,000, you probably wouldn't really care if it looked like all the other pocket parks, right? But you don't want this to look just like Bellevue's park they just built. I mean, you want this to be something unique to you. And so that's, you know, when we design and when we pick the manufacturers that we use, that is what we take into consideration. Now, I'm pretty sure I went way over time. I told you I'd talk a lot. I do. I'll leave them out here on the tables and y'all can fight over them. Yep. Yep. That's artificial turf. Yeah, we wouldn't, you could theoretically put like natural grass on a hill because they don't technically, well, we could argue about it. But you'd have to put something that would, yeah, correct. It would turn into mud pits, so. Has a longer warranty. It is a little more longer warranty. So typically poured rubber has a 5-year warranty. Most of your turfs will have 7 to 10 years, and it depends on which one you're looking at. You know, there's different tough sizes and all this stuff. But turf is more maintenance heavy. And people will tell you otherwise, but I'll show you examples of where people did not, sales groups will tell you otherwise, but I'll show you examples where if you don't take care of the turf, it'll just over and won't look good. So power brooming it, as big as, power broom, it's like it looks like a weed eater with a bigger roto broom head on it, just, yeah, you have to brush it, yeah, because so turf will have, you got your strands, and then there'll be thatching in it, and then in that there is an infill. So like you think of a football field, we use like a crumb rubber infill. Playgrounds use a sand, the silica sand so it's antimicrobial. But that infill helps keep the fibers standing vertically. And so if you don't maintain it and kind of work that back in every so often, it'll lay over. And then once it lays over, it's much more prone to the seams coming apart and all that. Now, typically, it all depends on how much foot traffic is getting. But, you know, one of our other guys worked for Huntsville. I think Huntsville City Schools hates us. We take all their best guys. But the guy that managed all their playgrounds, they do a lot of turf, and he had a maintenance system because he just kind of learned, like, hey, if we don't, and I think they would do it about once a month. He would till it up, yeah. I think you could probably do it once or twice a year just to keep it from getting to a point where it was really gonna, but if you can't stick it out there and not do anything with it like you can poured rubber. Yeah, I mean, technically you could take like a garage broom, but on an area that big, that would be, yeah. So like Ben at Huntsville, they would use. 300,000. Oh yeah, or even 10,000 square foot, yeah, that's right, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, so they're very similar in price, like probably $1 off. And it all depends on, so rubber, the cost of the rubber depends on how thick it is. How thick it is depends on how tall the equipment is. Just on average, we'll call it 3.5 inches thick because that's 8 feet fall height. A swing is typically your biggest fall component, and the average swing is 8 feet. So 3.5 inches thick. The thicker you make it, the more expensive it is, obviously. And then rubber also has that top layer that you see. It can be colored or it can be black rubber. Standard is that half of it's black, half of it's colored, and there's a standard color selection: red, blue, green, tan. That's your standard price. When you say, hey, we want it all to be color, we want 100% color, it goes up like a quarter. And then when you say, hey, we actually want teal, and then we want, we want you to make a rainbow, it goes up even more. So turf is the same way. in that once you hit an 8-foot fall height, we have to have a double layer of the foam padding, which makes it a little more expensive. And then there's a couple different types of turf you could pick, and it will come down to preference and basically when you fill them all on the table, which one you think fills the nicest. But ultimately, the low end of both of them and the high end of both of them are probably within $1 of each other. You know what I'm saying? So like, if you took a premium color rubber at 4 inches, it might be $13 a square foot, where a standard turf is gonna be 10. But if you know, so if you compare the standard to standard. So what I would say is, they're close enough in price that I would make my selection between the two based on which one I like for its properties, for its aesthetics, or if I like the warranty better, or whatever. I mean, you might have 8,000 square feet. So, you know, $8,000 is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of maybe a $2 or a $3 or a $400,000 project that's going to be out here for 20 years, it's not, in my opinion, it's not enough to swing you the way. Because I can't, for $8,000, we could add you like 2 more bays of swing. I mean, you're not giving up a lot. Exact same. It's either gravel, or they have to sit on a gravel substrate or concrete substrate. So you do the same thing. You do the same prep and pretty much have the same border. Remember it? Okay, cool. Yeah. So it will depend ultimately on how big the mound is and how much contour it has. But generally, like the one at Cornelia is a great example since we just finished it. That whole thing has a gravel base. So we started with a gravel base that the rubber, like in the flat area, would start on. And then on top of that, there's soil. I think it's compacted in 6-inch lifts. So I think we compacted 6 or 12 inch. I think it was 6-inch lifts. Up to the last foot of it, and then there was like basically, it's not exactly shotcrete, but pretty much like a 3 or 4 inch shotcrete cap that went over. So before the rubber went down, if you would have walked up after we built it, before we did the rubber, it would look like a big concrete mound. But it's not all concrete. I mean, that would, you know. Water from seeping down into the soil and whatever. Also, they can be made out of gravel. Gravel is just really hard to keep a shape, you know what I mean? And so it just really, so again, it depends on, if we just make a big round one, we could probably use gravel and then put like a concrete. Also, the ones that we're designing for Ravenwood will actually be out of geofoam, same type that they would put like under roads or a bunch of different ways we can do it. It kind of all of typically the things that are going to break are the plastic. Playcraft has been using the same size metal deck for log that's out of plastic and it's molded, or I would say this, more often pretty rare that like we get a slide that breaks, we have to take it off, and there's just nothing. Red Cabooses is fenced in. There's a certain distance from a road. A lot of playgrounds that we built are some requirements. Other side of it is, some people don't like the idea of containment. They don't want, a lot of it just depends on where people are always gonna go, like if it's in a spot where, I would imagine Bowie's kind of like this. One of the things, I didn't mention this, I was trying to show you just so we could that design had. All of those were around the same. They're all around. They're between like 6 and 8,000. I don't know that Bobby and Jimmy are over here. It doesn't affect product warranties because technically all they did was attach. Our install, if you said, hey, Nathan, our install cost would be about $50,000. Have some equipment like Bobcats, all the concrete work. All we're doing is just paying their all depends on how long they're out, but you know, that might be a $10,000 fee. But concrete, you don't have access. The problem becomes if you don't have access to all that stuff and you're just thinking, I'll go to Lowe's and buy the concrete and I'll save on those. But point being, if you don't have, save a little bit, but at the same time, I don't know that I think it's enough that it, y'all build it and y'all screw it up. Project this size, there's a lot of I remember the first time I designed one. How much? Are you kidding? You know, I don't mean hodgepodge it like, but you know, start with a big design. Red cabooses just for playgrounds. Like if you could pull just that playground out and get rid of the fence, they had to do a bunch of sidewalk work up at a really high elevation. If you've ever been out there, all in, and it's got a lot of rubber on it. I mean, it was. I don't think it's quite, but it's eight or nine. Yes is the answer to that. I will get that for you. Yes. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for your time. Yeah, I enjoy talking about playgrounds, as you can see.
This is actually Nancy Jackson's presentation that she gave back in August. And I just wanted to kind of revisit it and to look at it in terms of um, not necessarily having the whole playground be natural playground, but I think when you look at the surveys, most people wanted a combination of equipment base and natural playground. And actually, equipment base, constructed, and natural playground, which are three different styles of playground. So this is, Nancy did a lot of research on this, and I'm not privy to all her knowledge, but she wasn't available, so I'm gonna try to do what I, try to do it justice. Okay. Point it that way? What now? Oh, turn it on. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is the definition of a natural play learning space. Designated managed location in an existing or modified outdoor environment where children of all ages and abilities play and learn by engaging with and manipulating diverse natural elements, materials, organisms, habitats, blah, 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 blah. So one thing that people have said against having any part of the playground be a natural playground is Bowie Park is a natural playground. And that's true for people who can walk. And people who can't, it would be nice to have a place for them to go and experience nature. And a friend of mine has MS, and she is in and out of a wheelchair. And one thing that she said was it would be really good to bring nature to lap level. So what she was talking about would be something like an elevated, almost a table, but something that can be outside in the elements and not rot, that you could put natural items there that she could examine or that a child could examine. That's just one example. Anyway, so there's a lot of research into when kids play outside, and especially when they're playing with nature, that they're happier, they learn to discover, as you were talking about your kids playing in the woods, okay? So nature play teaches kids to climb higher, think creatively, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Regulate stress, be connected to the wild and to the world. Okay, this is a schematic of the area of the park that we're talking about. This green, let's see if I can do this. Right here is the footprint of the old playground, the Treehouse Playground. This area is where those mosaic sculptures are. And of course, here's the entrance road. And this, to me, and I'm just inputting my own view, would be an ideal place to put a natural playground, even if we did all equipment-based playground here. This right here is 13,200 square feet, because that looks like it's the shape of the original footprint, because that's what Leathers and Associates told me. What do you mean? Possibly, but there's a lot of there's a lot of area that you need to have free. Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. So yeah, we may be able to put some natural. The thing that I'm concerned about putting natural play areas inside with the poured in place rubber or playground turf is that you've got sand and rocks and sticks and that kind of stuff, and you probably don't want that on playground turf or poured-in-place rubber, right? So that was my feeling. Or, I mean, we could possibly maybe, yeah, sorry. Put a fence maybe here and put, have part of it be natural playground, part of it be equipment-based playground, put a fence in between it so that kids don't go from one to the other. They have to go around and, not get sticks on there. Yes, yeah, yeah. To another. Yeah. So anyway, what I was envisioning was this area here. And she's actually got, this is the actual, original footprint that she's envisioned having the whole thing be natural playground, which I don't really feel like, just based on the surveys, I don't think that's what the community wants. I think the community wants a combination of equipment-based and natural playground. And so I really wish she had put, like A, B, because I can't really look at this and say, this is where the benches are. Well, I guess those are the benches. Where's the gravel access path? Maybe this, I don't know. But I really wish she was here, but she's not, sorry. But rope climbing, that was one of the components that you were talking about. I mean, there's a lot of playground companies that do rope structures. Here's some examples, and here's something that looks very much like one of those playgrounds that you guys did, except I believe this is probably grass rather than playground turf. But these are some of the things that Nancy was envisioning in a natural play area. Okay, some more. And then this would be the area, I believe this is the area around where the, yes, right here. These are those mosaic tile structures or sculptures. So she was talking about having a creek type thing or a water element of some kind. I keep hitting the go forward button when I really mean to do this. And she's even got a splash pad in here. So I'm assuming this is the splash pad. And then this looks like some kind of a hedge or something to keep kids off the road, because this is the access road. And this is one water element that what Nancy was talking about was having up here be a pump that the kids have to actually pump so that they're not just turning on a faucet and letting it run, which is going to be really expensive, but you have to pump it in order for the water to run. And then to have it just go into, a ditch or a sewer or something, or maybe even channel it into the pond, but not recycle it. Because if you recycle it, then you have to have filtration and all kinds of other stuff. And there was a recycling creek in a natural playground in Cincinnati, and they've had to shut it down because they couldn't keep up. I guess they couldn't meet the safety requirements because of the filtration system that was required and all of that. So that was my original vision, was to have a recirculating creek. I think that would be really cool, but yeah. So one thing that Nancy did say is that you really need an expert to come and talk to us about what is possible and what's not possible, because, I mean, here I am saying, I would love to see a recirculating creek. Well, somebody who knows would tell you that's not very practical. So, but this, yes. So, I think a lot of kids would. I think that would be pretty cool. Is that something that your company can do?
Yeah, we can. It depends on.
Would that be like real beefy, like you're talking about, like a splash pad? Okay. Right, right. And a goat, maybe a goat drains into the lake or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so splash pads are also.
Only produce a certain amount of water per day or something?
Yeah, that'd be the flow.
That's self-regulating. That's self-regulating, yeah. But that was another thing in the survey, was a lot of people wanted some kind of water element because it gets really hot here in the summer. Water guns. Yeah, those are pretty cheap. And I'm not really sure. Oh, this is a garden, I believe, and we've got smell over. Keith, do you know anything about this? Has Nancy shared this with you? Okay, I believe this is a garden, like a sensory garden, so that there's smells and taste and she's got taste even here. So I don't know if she's talking about, yes. Really? Now, is there really a tasting place where you can taste the things that so like berries and stuff? Oh, herbs, okay, okay. Huh, May? Yes, there is. And it didn't work. Yeah. No, kids don't care about it. Yeah, they really don't. Okay. Well, something like this or like this looks like something that we could, I think it would be something doable and something that I think the community would really like. I'm not sure what this is. I think it's a maze. Oh, yeah, a labyrinth. There you go. And this is a giant bird's nest, a place where you can build little teepees and such. One really intriguing natural playground item I saw was a sundial where you stand in it and your shadow becomes the shadow for the sundial. And of course, couldn't put that really on any of these places I'm talking about, maybe out where the equestrian area was. That might work. And then this is, phase 3 would be, I'm pretty sure, I'd have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure this area here that she's talking about is like right next to the playground, or not the playground, the parking lot. You know where I'm talking about, like down from the little picnic area there. And she was talking about having some net climbers, which, again, you guys do those. And so that's the end of that presentation. it's something that I think we should think about, because I think the community would really like to see some of these items in the play area. Maybe not in the same area with the equipment, but adjacent to it perhaps. And I really think that somebody who's an expert at this should come and talk to us about it. I tried to get somebody from Placemaker to come, and she wasn't available today, but she could possibly be available sometime in December. So I'll tell her when our meeting is in December, when we announce that, and see if she can come. I mean, do you guys want to see that? Okay, all right. That's the end of my presentation. Nancy's presentation.
So the next piece is just some discussion on a list of housekeeping items. I'm thinking maybe the core committee folks can come up here so we can utilize the microphones and properly get it recorded. It's not a lot of stuff to go through. I'll just talk about and hand out some handouts I've got and stimulate thoughts, and then talk about scheduling a playground tour in our next meeting and some other updates. So maybe if take a couple minutes and we'll just work our way up here and test. Excellent. So just some general updates. The website, last update I had was we were looking at putting a calendar widget in there, and I've not heard back from the person that was working on that, so I'll reach out to him to see if that calendar's out there. That's the main, there's two main things I think on the website that'll be helpful, is that calendar, the master calendar, as well as the document repository. So things like the presentation we just saw, some of these documents we'll talk about today on the general practices of the project, they'll all get into a central place that we can use it as a reference, but also the general public can look. The mailing list, I know I got a copy of what is the consolidated list that you worked on. It looks great. And we're still getting names that came in. I saw you sent a name in.
Yeah, and that's, I gave you access to it, so you can put those names in.
Absolutely,
You
through a
can add
shared,
things,
like a
and yeah.
Google share.
Yeah,
The Facebook page is up and running. Thank you. It's been great. I
Yes.
really appreciate all of your work on that, especially with the barbecue event and just other awareness post about these meetings that are coming up. Because, you know, these startup meetings, we've had 2 or 3 that are big, they're central, kind of generally related to an education for us all as we go forward on the project. But there'll be a point in the next couple of months where teams will break off and we'll have smaller meetings that are very focused on maybe a fundraising event or focused on another element of the project versus this design. I'm talking now with one of the county commissioners to try to see if we can get space over at the rec center. They have, my understanding is they've got different classrooms that people can rent for private clubs. You know, I don't know, maybe you sell Avon or something. So I'm trying to see if we can work a deal where we can get that space donated. And so we could have 2 to 4 meetings a month over the next year as needed for these different groups when it's not, still have this city hall available to request when we've got a big group, but for the smaller groups so that we're not constrained to only on Wednesdays, only when it's free here. And then we also don't necessarily have to have city staff come in just for our meetings on those. He's out of town. He said he's going to check on that when he gets back. And so I can update with that. The barbecue results from the fundraiser this past weekend came out to I think, a total of about $11,600 for that one day. And that's a combination of proceeds at the gate for admission, sponsorship donations, team admission. And so, but I think everybody was surprised at how much
Oh,
that
wow.
materialized when we added everything up. And it was great fun. So I've seen they're already scheduling one for next year, I think in October. And I think that has the potential to become an interesting event for Fairview in general that could certainly go beyond this project. Nonprofit partner updates, and there's a couple of, I've had some questions come in on how we handle as new fundraising projects come in, how we actually handle that. And I'll pass out a document to look at. And I sent this out, and I've provided it to them to read. I don't put this out there to say this is the way it should be, but it's kind of a suggestion on how we can frame up a team document that basically defines the mission of a team and the processes that are followed, so that if somebody says, hey, I would like to do a cakewalk fundraiser for the playground project, how do I do it? Well, they'd be able to come here as somebody in the public and understand where they fit in that fundraiser package and understand the steps, how they proceed to do it, how they deposit those funds, and how they can get recognized for those deposits, as well as bigger projects that we would call registered fundraisers. The barbecue would be a good example. It's a bigger project. There's some setup scope and admission fees and sponsors that come in, and so it's a little bit of a different environment and would be treated a bit differently on a case-by-case basis. And so we talk about, if you had that idea, what do you do? Who do you need to contact? What do you need to do? What are the steps to take? And down to general donations that I would just like to, I saw it, read about it in the paper, I want to donate $100, for the playground and how that would be accommodated. So there's going to be some more stuff that will be filled out, more scenarios as we go forward in the project. We're going to get to an area where we're not just taking money in, but we're actually distributing money for construction, for some of the other things. And so we've got to have some language in there that talks about that process and where the gates are for those approvals. So they've got this now to study and think about. They're going to come back with some additional recommendations, and we'll look at that at our next meeting. What we want to do, so this is one for the finance. I've got another one we'll talk about next for the, this is recognition team. Same kind of concept. This isn't meant to be the way to do it, but it's a framework to start thinking about the things we need to think about and providing information where we haven't captured everything. This was part of a learning exercise from the barbecue project, where there were so many, several interesting things about the project. It was kind of stood up and conceived and managed and successfully ran by Derek and Debbie. And so they ran that. We didn't really run it. They were running it for us, to make a donation to the park. So at the end of the day, as they get done and they have success, how do those thank yous and recognitions happen? And from talking with them about what they felt would be easiest, and I agree, as more of these fundraisers come in, we can't keep track of everybody. If there's a cakewalk fundraiser set up, we don't know who participated, we don't know who made cakes, and we don't have visibility. So I would propose that for the people that are doing their fundraisers, their internal thank yous can occur through whatever process they use. What we will use as a thank you, though, is that organization and whoever deposits the money, if it's a person, to make sure those get put out and that we can recognize it as a thank you right off the bat, but also include it down the road when we look back in the past 6 months. Here are all the contributors, a big thank you, they're included there. So there's a bit to look through here in just Word, and I would just ask that as you look through it, if you see something that doesn't sound right, or you've got some other ideas, other scenarios that we should pencil in, we want to do it where it's as efficient as possible. And again, this will become we've got the original flow chart that had all these kind of functional team components, so these now start to give a lot more detail and meat to exactly what does that mean. And these would get posted on the website as well as part of an overall project document to have these backing all those. Again, it becomes a reference for ourselves in 6 months. We say, what did we say we were doing here? And also for the general public who says, I would like to do that. What do I need to do? Or maybe I would like to participate on a team. What's involved? How much time? What are those tasks? So this is kind of a first step for these early teams that we're starting to see traffic in. That's why we're kind of reacting and starting to fill out more detail here. Yes, sir. Well, what we've, I don't have the full team document, but I believe there's a team in there that is specifically for volunteer management and hospitality. So what I would expect is that particular team person, that team, whoever that was, whether it's a generic email or a person contact, could handle those incoming requests.
So far, we don't have a lead for those teams, but we are actively looking. Yeah.
Yes,
We're
and
doing it, and we're looking for someone to lead those teams.
Well, and I'm wondering if, I mean, we've got that database of volunteers, of people who said they wanted to be involved, and a lot of them said, or not a lot, but several of them said, give us a list, what do you need, and we'll see how we can fit in. So I would say, let's compose a request and send it out to all those people on that mailing list and give them, we have to give them a, what do you do if you want to be this person?
Right.
Should we, and what should that be? Should that be contact you, Scott?
It's my sense that there's probably people that just don't.
That don't know where to fit in.
how to
Right,
fit in and what's
right,
available, and
right.
has a team started yet, right? Some of the teams haven't started yet.
Right.
Yeah,
So if someone's interested in doing something, should they contact you? I mean, would that be a?
They certainly can for now. I think they could contact any of us, and we would route it, but certainly me. And I think that's a good idea. What we can do is I can revisit the original team diagram, and now we've got some people that we can plug in that have kind of naturally associated in those. And then here's some areas that are gaps that we really need. For example, we've got Scott Merritt, who's working the web page side. You've just began working the Facebook side. I love that, and the thank you side. So if you're comfortable in that, well, that's perfect. We've got Debbie, who's the fundraising team. We've got the core team, which is some of us here, the design selection, which will be the kind of the next focused meetings that we're going to have now that we started, is where we sit down and start talking specifically about what are we trying to build towards. And so we looked at the different types of equipment, different ages, different capabilities. And so what is that spread that we'd like to generically say before we look at equipment that we'd like to cover, and then start going through these different catalogs and arguing a little bit and throwing ideas and come up with a few proposed designs that we can then put back in front of vendors and say, help us price that, right? And decide if we need to shrink it or if we've got other room or if there's better ideas on the layout. And those folks will have a bit more expertise. They'll have the expertise to say, okay, you've got, I'll make up a number, 20 items. They know the egress and ingress, the separation, and what we've got in the footprint, and they can start laying that out with their software, and we can see if that looks good or it doesn't look good and go from there. But I think the first piece would be start having our, again, that'll be probably a document. We're building something that aspires to meet these needs in these age groups, and then throw in some equipment options, and then take their guidance and sage advice on what works and what doesn't in those areas.
So going back to the volunteering, I could compose something that could be used in email and on the Facebook page, and then send it around to the core team to approve, proofread and approve, and then we could get it out there to folks saying, these are some of the sections that we need volunteers in.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, because we got a big emailing list now. I think we're going to need to coordinate a little bit on that email setup because, when you've got a lot of people, they'll get an email. There's going to be some people that are going to forget they did it, that wonder why they're getting an email when they're not. So we need to be careful to make sure that we've got the components that, let's say, take me off your list, don't send, or keep me on the list, but don't send me emails anymore, so that we don't get complaints. We don't want a complaint to go back through the internet and they ban our domain or something like that.
Do we use an email system like MailChimp or Constant Contact?
We haven't selected one yet.
I
We've
would
just got a
really love to
database of
because
names, so.
My Outlook, I have to copy and paste 100 at a time. You know, so it
So
would
there
be
are
nice.
several products that we could use that we could import the data we've got. We've got it in Excel. I can convert it into any format that we want to upload it. But it's just a matter of selecting one that has the function and price, you know, best
Right.
deal that we can get, which might be free.
Yeah, I've used MailChimp before for a company that I worked for, and up to a certain list size, you got it for free, and with certain functionalities, which we wouldn't need huge functionalities.
For what we're doing, that's right.
Yeah.
We don't need tracking.
Just if I could make one
That's right.
list and send it out once instead of having to send
Yeah.
it out 4 times.
And then you can do subgroups. You can
Yeah,
do
yeah.
just the fundraising team,
Gotcha,
or like people that
gotcha.
are interested in.
That would be excellent if we could
and-
do something like that.
Yeah, and I think all of them offer an unsubscribe automatically.
That
on
would
the
be good.
emails.
That would be
So-
good. And I do have on the Loblolly Times, which I send out to everybody on the mailing list. If you want to unsubscribe, just email me. And
So you
no-
just handle that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so, but that's just for the Loblolly Times. The other emails that I send, I don't have a disclaimer at the bottom.
And whatever that product is, it'd be nice if there was a way to set up so that not unauthorized, but an unauthenticated user could come in and just register, right? I can come to the website, I'm interested, I want to get on the mailing list and have it have a clip out that it goes to, and I can put my, oh, you already exist, you're already in here, or let me record that so that so they don't have to contact us and we don't have to route it around to maintain.
Yeah, that would be really nice if it could be automatic. Yeah,
Just
add to the
propagate
list.
into the list, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, are you comfortable with the MailChimp idea? Is that something you have time to look at and see if that would fit our purposes, or you do? And then just email me if, you know, if there's things I can do to help. And the sooner we could probably take our current, what is a database now, and dump that in there and have management start happening through there of that data would be perfect. And then we can start, there's a lot of emails I see in the future on just, hey, we've got a barbecue next week, hey, we've got a meeting, all those things that we can start immediately leveraging. Because I agree, I think the next challenge will be just getting the word out, right? There's a certain amount of people that have been watching the project and they're interested, and there are more, but if we can communicate a little more timely and to those people, then I think we'll start filling some of these other slots.
Yeah. So the Facebook page is Bowie Playground Build, and if you all are on Facebook, I beg of you to go like the page, share some posts, like some posts, all of that. When you start liking or sharing, then your friends will see that you've done that because it's local to them. So if you can do that, then it'll start spreading around and more people will be able to see it.
That's right, and I've noticed organically that kind of growth already is happening just from it showing up and just a
Yeah.
few people being interested, so. Yes, yes,
That
exactly.
was a very good example. Is there a way, if we want something posted on there, should we send it to you? How do we, I don't know enough about Facebook. Maybe I need to ask you after the meeting, but,
You can email it to me, or
Okay.
you can, if it's something that you want to post on your page first, or like Friends of Bowie, and
and then
just
share it?
Yeah, you can share it automatically to the page, or if it won't let you do that for some reason, then you can just send me a quick instant message thing saying,
Okay.
hey, I just posted this, share it real quick, and I'll do it.
Okay. Okay, so, okay.
And also on the Facebook page, I think there is a way to have a donate button on the Facebook page where it could link directly to like the PayPal account. I need to do some research on that, but that would be an easy way for people to donate if they aren't able to stop by the bank or come to one of the events or something like that. Yes, absolutely. I'll pin a post. I think I can pin a post of all the ways that they can get a hold of us.
You know, and maybe, I don't know, on this particular page setup, if there's a place that has like common links that we can put on there that might link to the project page, the project website, or might link to the Friends website, if there's 3 or 4 kind of common links related to the project. And I just don't know if that's something that can be formatted on there or not, but
Definitely in the about section. I
yes,
can
that's
put
it, yeah.
all the different links, but I'll see if there's a way to do it like directly on the page as well.
That might help centralize things a little bit. I mean, not that there will be a center, but
Right.
a few centers.
That's
The
right.
page, the web page. the
Yeah.
And you can
Well,
enter
depending on
from
how
any one of
tech
them.
savvy you
Instagram
are.
Right.
page too, kind of cover
Yeah.
all the bases.
I think
might be
once
the
we
easiest
get
way to
further
things.
along, like actually towards construct, because Instagram is just photos. There's not, like, you add text, but it's mostly about photos. So like when we start actually doing like even the playground visits and design selection, like I can take pictures in the catalog and then start,
Yeah. It's a good way to get the word out about
Yeah.
events too.
That's a really good one,
Yeah.
events, the flyer for the barbecue or the
Yeah,
flyer.
and a lot of
for-
people who don't look at Facebook, they will look at Instagram and vice versa.
yeah.
It is hard to centralize those. kind
That
of
might
events.
be a survey we could send out via email too, like how many people,
Or on Instagram
Yeah,
or on
versus
Facebook
Facebook.
or, yeah. And there are those people that are Luddites and just don't do any of it.
You gotta hit all the bases.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's what we have the Fairview Observer for.
Right, yeah, that's
Yeah.
another avenue
Yeah,
for
so,
reaching folks.
yeah.
Yeah, they may even donate space.
Well, I did that for the Pork in the Park. I put up flyers around on all the, not for this meeting or for.
Yeah, maybe once we get the website running, because that's going to be a core repository that we could create
Put a QR code. And
a
people
QR
can-
code and a little sign out there that, the old playground footprint down at maybe at the sidewalk and up at the footprint that kind of says, this is not going to be an empty spot
Yeah.
forever.
See
There is
what's
actually a
coming.
project
Or
out
put a
here,
little
yeah,
sign there
yeah.
that says, watch this spot.
Yeah.
And the information
And even maybe
There's a bunch of, you'll be surprised at how many.
yeah, because it could be posted in the nature center as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's one in the nature center that,
By the restrooms and the parking
one, yeah, the parking lot next to the nature center. There's one in front of the restrooms. There's one across the dam. There's one up on the hill where they did the. One out by the Twin Lakes. I didn't get a Pork in the Park flyer. It was too dark when I was putting them around.
So we'll just work on the email piece back and forth if, trying to figure out how, if that product you're familiar with works, and we'll get that data loaded and go ahead and I'll start framing up, updating that master team diagram now that we've got more people and names to put in so that we can start seeing where we've got gaps and kind of recruit through that
that's a good
email
idea.
exercise.
And then maybe, and we could even target, because I've got one database that's got the comments that people made, and we could just search.
Some have
on-
already expressed
we could
specific
s-
interest in
yeah,
areas.
So we could search on, fundraising. There's several people who said they wanted to do fundraising, several people who wanted to do grant writing. So, and there
That's
were-
great, yeah.
And there were several people who said, I can't do this, but I could do something, and I think that would be a good thank you crew person.
That's right, that's right, because they can just work, yeah, they
They
don't,
could write just sign their name to a thank you card or whatever, so.
the next item on here is, I was thinking of scheduling a local area playground tour. And by local area, I mean something that we can reasonably accomplish in 4 hours in an afternoon. And hit kind of some key playgrounds, some of them that were mentioned today up there. So what I can do is kind of work up a list from what I have seen
Okay,
and thought
so
might be.
the ones that he mentioned today were Capitol View Park in Nashville. I think that would be a good one to go to.
That's not quite open yet or opening soon,
Oh,
if
I thought it
remember right.
I thought that one was open. Maybe not.
think
I thought it was, but there were several that were not, but that one was one of the first ones he showed, and I thought it was live. Maybe not. We can look it up. But the Don Fox Park in Lebanon, Murray County Park in Columbia, that's pretty far, though. I can't do that in 4 hours, I don't think.
The new Caboose Park, I think, is a
Caboose
good one
Park,
to
yeah.
see the
And
example of this, you know,
Yeah.
this-
the Cornelia Park too.
Where's that?
I think
Yeah.
that one was in Nashville somewhere.
Yeah, I
but
don't know
it-
where that is, but
It
that's
was
the one
the
he
one
said
with the
was
mounds and all
more
the
funky.
spheres.
You know, the old
yeah.
Sound Stadium, isn't it? Isn't that
Okay.
Fort Cornelia Park?
And I'd also like to go see the Fannie Mae Dees Park. It's the Dragon Park in Nashville.
Oh,
Yeah,
Dragon Park is
It's
great.
a beautiful, I've taken my kids there
Really?
several times
Really?
growing up.
I would like to
Yeah,
see
and they've
it.
just redone it. They just redid the
Yeah,
tower.
it's been
Yeah,
recently
there's a lot of
redone.
kind of really nice, there's Crockett Park is really good.
Crockett is another
It's
one.
a great playground. The zoo's an amazing playground.
Yes, let's go to the
That's probably,
zoo.
you know, like if you were
Zoo,
kid and only got to pick one, I would pick that right.
really?
I
Well,
mean,
it-
it's an old wood playground, just like.
Just
this one,
massive.
but
Leathers, yeah.
It's massive, and not only is massive, it's just so many different things. Yeah, I mean, the scale does,
It has a
does
lot
make
of,
it.
a lot of rope.
it has a ton of rope stuff. It's
Yeah.
got some tunnel things. Kids always hit their head on it. Yeah, they can really get lost there, and it's one of those like, it's enclosed. There's parts that you cannot see. You don't know where they are, but you just stay. Parents have a little area kind of by the entrance, and you just.
Trust.
Trust
don't
that
go
they're gonna
past
come back
them.
out.
They do,
So-
and they love that, and it's
Yeah.
good for them. But you know that it showed me the importance of the fence, and we started with our kids pretty young there. You know, just young enough to go off by themselves, but you're nervous. So, you know, even in that size, having that sort of one entrance,
That's right.
one in and out is pretty key.
So
But it's a very cool playground.
there's a couple of action items related to this. One is the selection of the sites. And I would just say maybe any ideas that you got, if you send them to me, I will incorporate with mine. And what I'll do is I'll map it through Google to show, and I'm sure it will be more than what we can digest. So then we'll have to pare down to make something that we can accomplish. And I've got a van that can hold 7 people. We can caravan, we can ride together, whatever makes sense. The other mechanical piece of that is picking a date.
Right.
And so I looked at my calendar, November 16th Saturday or November 23rd Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., but I am open and flexible for other ideas.
Or November 23rd.
Probably do the 16th.
And certainly, it's not something we all have to do together, but I think there is a benefit of us all seeing the
there
same
is,
thing and
yeah.
pointing and talking about it and remarking about what we don't like, pictures. It'll help us later when we recall what we liked and didn't like about an area.
Well, and there's another, I mean, if we wanted to do it, expand it, I went to Hendersonville's Mary's Magical Place and to Cookville's Heart of the City, and those were built by the 2 presenters from the last.
Leathers or
Yeah,
the
Leathers and then the other.
one of each?
Yeah, one of each. So that would be really good. And I did that, and I think I left at maybe 10 in the morning and came back at maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
big.
it's a big circle, yeah.
Yeah, and so it may be, I would just say all of these locations, if you send to me, I'll plot them in Google and send them back. And it might be something we can also split into 2 different types of trips. It might be, hey,
Right.
there's one on this side
north,
of the
one
world.
south.
Yes, yeah. And
This
so
side of the world,
let's
that
see what
side
we
of the
come up
world.
with.
In White Bluff, it's not that far. but,
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of.
And if we can, if you'll send me
and-
those, I'll plot that.
Okay.
And then the dates here, I guess, think about those, let me know. And if we can collectively agree on it, then we can
Okay.
actually pick a date and a time where we meet up and those kind of things.
When is Thanksgiving in relation to these 2 dates?
That's
It's
after
the
that 28th.
28th.
You said 16 and 23rd?
16, 23rd.
Yeah, so Thanksgiving would be the following weekend after the 20th.
Okay, so, yeah, I think I'll still be in town then. Both of those dates. I think I could do either one of those. It seems like the 16th sticks out in my mind for some reason. I'll have to look, but,
23rd, basically one Saturday or the following one in case there was something that blocked up one or the other. Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't want to walk around and get
There's
soaked.
that.
So send me any ideas. I'll go ahead and plot it. I'll send it back, and then we can kind of back through emails and narrow it down to what's a workable scope. The other thing I've got on here, and it may be premature, but maybe not, to go ahead and set a true design team meeting date, which is strictly, now that we've heard from vendors, a time where we bring our catalogs out, we come with some pre-thought ideas on the functionality scope, I think is the first thing to address. And this presentation today was really helpful, seeing some of those charts. So that's going to help me learn a little bit going through there.
Yeah, that questions list of like the thought process you need to go through, and I thought that would be extremely
Yeah,
helpful.
and also just the prices of like the surface, because that's going to be our most expensive thing is the
Definitely.
surface.
We have
and
a lot of
ways to
surface.
And ways to minimize that, because like you don't really need that surface if it's the, you know, the
Yeah, they
musical
showed,
instruments.
You know, even
Right.
the one thing they showed today was a pathway around, so you
Right.
could get there, especially as a parent, if you had get there, but that's not meaning you could would mulch the rest of the thing or something. You have a lot of options. You don't have to
Right.
lay rubber on the whole place, which
That's
to
right.
me doesn't seem to fit that park. You know, the fact, all these playgrounds that I mentioned, a few of those like Crockett Park and the zoo, wood and mulch, you know, it's a very simple, but the kids love it. I think there's
Yeah,
something
and
about
that's the
that.
way our old one was
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
and the kids loved it.
Yeah, and you know, that wooden playground has a longer lifespan than the put in place. So, you know, all of a sudden it's like, well, do we need? Great questions, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and I mean, we
And
could
then
do,
that's us managing the project and taking on multiple vendors, you know, and then maybe, you know, instead of saying, hey, you, Leathers, for example, or whatever, build this thing.
right.
You know, that's simple, but then maybe you're not getting exactly what you want. But if we were to manage vendors, multiple types of groundscape, play structures,
I mean, if
and
you-
maybe, you know, you could always work with a landscape architect or someone for that, or as a professional coordinator, if someone is willing to as
Yeah, if you-
many things as you can get, you know, and some of us have some experience at least.
If you have one of those towers, you don't need poured-in-place rubber right underneath it, because the wheelchair can't go under there anyway.
Right.
So-
I think you're on.
Start that conversation. So,
Yeah, I mean, maybe going on the playground tour would be very helpful ahead of time.
yes, and so that's how I've got this
Or, you know,
scoped
or
out.
keep in mind that, you know, this conversation about like, let's start looking things, well, that's probably one of half a dozen of those same conversations maybe that's not gonna, I don't see.
No, this is,
concrete and a SketchUp layout or something like that, for example, in.
there's
Yeah,
some
it's
time and
larger than that
detail.
To do it right. No, it doesn't take forever, but,
Right.
you know, could start the conversation and then keep doing these other researchy type of things.
Well, I've got this, you know, Wednesdays here are free, these first Wednesdays of the month. And you mentioned there was another vendor that would be available on the December 4th
Sometime in December, I don't know when
sometime.
she's.
So if they're available, we might have this room for another just overview, big core meeting that covers that and general updates like today. And then let me cross my fingers that we can snag some of those meeting rooms over at the rec center. And that's where we can get in there, because that's going to be a more focused meeting, and it's just going to be discussion in there, and it's not going to be quite as interesting necessarily as
Right,
the
so
stuff we've shown
we'd
today.
just be, okay, we want one of these and one of these. and
So
one of
I don't
these,
have a
yeah.
date for that, but I would say it would be probably helpful to have that first discussion after our playground tour. So if we were able to do that November 16th, then it's really a question of availability for that room and for us. But as soon as we can, as soon as everybody can get together, I think just those initial conversations of specifications, right? Before we even
Right.
get into the equipment, what are the audiences that we're building for? You know, what ages,
our goal?
capabilities? Yes, general things that we'd like to say when we're done, we've met these particular requirements, and then step back once we agree to that to, okay, what are the pieces to plug in to make sure we're meeting all of those that we set up? So it'll be an early discussion, but the sooner we get those, we're going to discover things that he said, I haven't thought about that, maybe some research. So why don't we try to set that meeting up sometime after the 16th. And what I'll do is as soon as I get word back on these other conference room areas and availability, I'll send out a few dates and we can do that and post it on Facebook. Again, the public's certainly welcome to attend, but it won't be probably as big of an event as one of these are.
Yeah, and there are several people who have said that Wednesdays don't work for them. I know,
Yeah.
I saw one post that says church night, so that can
it's
it be in
church
it? So
night,
we're
yeah.
kind of, one of the things with City Hall is we're restricted to certain times that it's available. And then we've also got, we've got to have staff that comes in and other things. So there's certain things that are appropriate, some of the big things, but other ones, we don't really need that extra space.
and I don't know that we need it for, I mean, this group could have been in a smaller room.
That's right, other than there was some benefit
Yeah,
from
there
television,
was.
the
There definitely
televised,
was
some of
that,
the people
yeah.
get ideas and say, that's kind of exciting.
That's where I was thinking, if you used a classroom, we have, smart boards and stuff like that in the classroom.
Oh, I see.
But is somewhere like the school available for?
I don't know.
Kind of seems like it wouldn't be, but I don't.
Probably it would be a lot more red tape than I think what we can get. And I've got my own projector, so I can bring a projector and
Oh,
set up
that's
in there.
good,
Yeah, so
yeah.
we've got some things that we
Okay.
can do in there we won't just be,
That's county.
Well, that's county too, but it's county school.
yeah, which have a bunch of restrictions on who can go and how can
Yeah,
go.
well, and
and-
I can find out. I can find out if we could do that, because I mean, it's pretty easy to do a presentation.
It's worth asking to find out
Yeah.
what that would look like, and
Okay,
I'll be
I'll-
working this
I'll ask
other
our-
avenue.
I'll start out by asking the principal and just ask her where to go to ask.
If we can
Where
get,
to ask.
if we can get a setup or an agreement, whether it's the rec center or whoever, then it's going to give us a lot more flexibility to say, we want to have a meeting next. Because these teams can start kind of acting on their own as they need to rework whatever it is that they're looking at, and not have to come through us and can just schedule that room and get everybody they need in the same place. And that's all I had at this point. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, my question would be, because I deal with this exact same issue at my work for different projects. First, like Peter Grimaldi mentioned when he spoke the last time we had this meeting, you gotta put that into the budget. It can't be like, okay, let's build a playground for $100,000 and then later let's get $20,000. Budget, maintenance should be built in, otherwise and then you just mentioned two people, but my question when I was thinking about this the other day is like, okay, who's great, get funding, have maintenance, who's gonna do the maintenance? I'm sure there's, I just don't know.
Yeah, and that kind of exercise will
or
be.
do we, and then do we do some in-kind maintenance? Do we do some volunteer maintenance to supplement maybe people who work at the park or for the city? Just posing those questions to be answered later,
And the city will,
but budget that has to
the
be.
city will weigh in on that. Part of what we're going to be charged with is bringing them a recommendation, and I'm sure they're going to be interested in the budget, the cost and the expertise required and staffing that, and that will be part of whether they say we like this or we have concerns with it, so.
And
Well, and I think we will take their input as part of this. Part of this whole project wrap-up is going to be what their feedback is, and whether they've got the abilities, capabilities, or concerns related to that. Because what we want to do is try to work together to root those out of the system before it gets presented, right? We've thought of that, and we got an answer for that.
Well, and hopefully Pork in the Park becomes a
An
yearly
annual event, yeah.
success exponentially, and that could be a part of the maintenance fund, like.
Sure, and
that
what other
could-
things? I mean, honestly, I thought it was a really great turnout, but I didn't see much advertising. I didn't see, I noticed there's a sign at the Bowie Park, like before, right on 100, that has a place for letters. There's nothing there. But of course, I think this was all fairly quick, and I think it's great that people jumped on it and did it. But I think, round two, be it Pork in the Park
we can do it
or another
better.
Yeah,
fundraiser,
absolutely.
you can catch, 30 people just driving down the street, say, oh, what's going on you know, I think there's more potential to even make it even
Oh,
better. And it was
yes.
obviously a good financial windfall, I think more than I expected.
That's right, and I think there's a lot of growth
There's,
potential.
I'm just saying there's a lot of
Not even
potential
in,
there.
outside of our community, even if advertised. And like some of the events at the park that I've seen that are bigger ones, they might even have a police car, and it's out there with the lights, they're directing, and the big banner, right? Immediately, like, what's going on at the park? Why is there so many people? So all of those kind of things, if you have the time to organize.
You have a few, like they do the events in Franklin at, well, it's called the Rock Park, where there's a baseball field. Oh, but it's like fire trucks and police cars and any other big vehicles. Touch a truck. People come out by the droves. So I'm just saying, you throw a fire truck out there and advertise it a little bit, all the kids are gonna come out, the parents. A lot of opportunity. And so, you know, saying, you have Pork in the Park and doing that successfully, even on a quick get it done, you know, with maybe not as much planning as it would be ideal. What other events throughout the year, you know, you don't want to saturate people too much, but I think there's a lot of opportunity, and with the excuse like, hey, we're trying to.
I would love to see a concert.
Sure,
And the-
music,
like,
Yeah.
perfect,
yeah.
I mean,
But there's a lot of talent in Fairview,
yeah.
and, you know, we need to tap into that, too. Well, we're gonna do, I mean, we always do a Christmas concert, and we're going to make that a fundraiser, but there's really not enough time to organize. I mean, I had envisioned having, I don't know, half a dozen Fairview musicians each play like 3 songs, and, but I think that would potentially draw a bigger crowd than we're allowed to have in that room in the nature center.
That could be
So-
something great for the spring for at the park,
Yes,
you know, for
yes,
example, just,
yes,
you know,
yes.
as a brainstorm.
And there's a musician who has agreed to do our Christmas concert. You know, when I proposed it to him, it's Tom Jones, and he knows a lot of musicians, and he can.
Where my daughter goes to school, which is.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of concert series and songwriter events and all that stuff all over town, and none of them are hurting for attendance. So I think we
Yeah,
could be very
yeah.
successful with that.
For the History Village Santa, yeah, there'll be a donation box, but it was kind of set up originally as a free event to the public to come in and tour and kind of just get them exposed and thinking a little bit about understanding what's out there and hopefully stimulate ideas and participation by people that they say, okay, I like this, how can I get involved? There's potential to do bigger things with that. I've actually had a vendor that reached out to me to, hey, are we doing vendors out there? You know, and I'll give 40% of proceeds. So it's too early to plan. I mean, too late to plan that kind of stuff now. But those are the kind of options. The touch the truck. We've had a couple of those in Fairview. The sheriff has actually brought in a helicopter and landed it. But if we did something in a hot summer day and did touch a truck, but we had a fire truck set up for maybe an hour, just spraying water and bring your kids and just go crazy, a splash pad for a day. I think now how you can generate revenue, donations pretty much. But I think parents what we saw at the barbecue, everybody was just donating. Even their prizes they were donating back to auction off. So
Did anybody accept the prize?
I don't know. I don't know. I
mean,
saw a lot that were.
I saw at least 2 of the 3 hand their prize money back.
I'm wondering, especially in the summertime.
I don't know. I can ask the county commissioner that I'm asking about, because I'm sure he can get the answer, and if there is a way to do it, he would probably
He'll
know
know
the right
how,
people to
yeah.
talk to. I
mean,
don't know
yeah,
how that works.
Summertime is a pool. I mean, if that's a event, because the pool has that, my kids love to go to the pool, and then the little park is right there, and the soccer fields, there's a lot of space.
Yeah, that would be, yeah. Yep, that would
And
be
just
very
ask for
cool.
donations, you know.
And then submit something back when you've said, okay, we've got some other, and then we'll kind of, we just want to get it to the point where we all understand and agree, and then we can just include it in part of the whole project package.
So we don't,
That's,
so we don't need to actually sit down with them, okay.
I think we covered a lot in our, yeah, with the exhibit I set out, so enough to know what we're doing next, what our next action items are. All right, well, thank you so much,
guys.
I
thank
move
you.
to adjourn.
Turn microphones off if there's any that were.